I sit across from my daughter Nicole at a lawyer's office, staring at 15 years of trust fund statements spread across the mahogany table. The forensic accountant has just finished his presentation. Photos of Nicole's beach house are still projected on the screen. $485,000. Purchase with money my late husband left for our grandchildren's college funds. My daughter's hands are shaking, but she's not apologizing. She's angry. You did this to me, Mom, Nicole says, her voice rising. You turned Dad against me. He wanted to leave me that money, and you convinced him I couldn't handle it. The lawyer clears his throat uncomfortably. The evidence is clear. $420,000 stolen over 15 years through fake administrative fees and forged signatures. But Nicole's pointing at me like I'm the criminal. I look at my daughter, the girl I raised, the mother of my 3 grandchildren, and realize this confrontation has been building since my husband's funeral 5 years ago. Since the day I convinced him to set up trusts instead of leaving everything to Nicole directly. You're right, I say quietly. I didn't trust you. And now I know I was right not to. If this sounds complicated, hit the like button because it gets worse. Drop a comment if you've ever been blamed for protecting someone from themselves. And you'll want to subscribe. This story doesn't end the way you think it will. Let me tell you how I discovered my daughter had been stealing from her own children and why she might actually have a point about who's really to blame. 5 years earlier, my husband Richard was dying of pancreatic cancer. We'd had 6 good months from diagnosis to hospice, enough time to say everything that needed saying, enough time to get his affairs in order. He was a dentist, had built a thriving practice over 40 years. We were comfortable. Paid-off house in a quiet neighborhood, solid retirement accounts, $800,000 in savings and investments. Richard wanted to leave everything to Nicole, our only child. She struggled, he said one night in the hospice room, his voice thin but determined. Her husband's business failed. They're drowning in debt. I want to take care of her. I held his hand and chose my words carefully. We'd been married 42 years. I knew when to push and when to let things breathe. What about the kids' education? I asked that we had 3 grandchildren. Emma was 15 then, Tyler 13, Sophie 10. Smart kids, all of them. Emma talked about becoming a doctor. Tyler was interested in engineering. Sophie was artistic, always sketching in notebooks she carried everywhere. Nicole will take care of them, Richard said. She's their mother. I wanted to say, Richard, our daughter's husband is a gambler. Their debt isn't bad luck, it's bad decisions, repeated over and over. Jake had invested in 3 different business ventures that collapsed. He played poker twice a week. He bought lottery tickets by the handful, but I didn't say that. Instead, I said, what if we set up trusts? Nicole can be the trustee. She'll control everything. But the money is designated college for the kids, living expenses for her. Structured. Protected. Richard turned his head to look at me. Even dying, he could read me like a book. You don't trust her, he said. I want to protect her, I said. Protect all of them. If we leave everything to Nicole outright and Jake's business debts catch up with them, creditors can take it all. But trust funds? Those are protected. The kids' futures are safe. It wasn't entirely a lie. Jake's creditors were a real concern. But I also knew that if Nicole had direct access to $800,000, it would be gone within 5 years. Not because she was malicious. Because she'd never learned to say no, not to Jake, not to her kids, not to anyone. Richard was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. Okay, set up the trusts. But Nicole is the trustee. I want her to know I trusted her with this. We structured it carefully with our lawyer. $500,000 divided into 4 trusts. 3 trusts of $150,000 each for Emma, Tyler, and Sophie, money for college, first home down payments, emergencies. And $200,000 for Nicole's own trust, with structured monthly distributions for living expenses. Nicole would be the trustee of all 4 trusts. I would be the backup trustee, but only if Nicole was unable or unwilling to serve. The trust documents specified that trustee compensation should be reasonable and customary, about 1% of the assets annually. On $500,000, that meant Nicole could pay herself roughly $5,000 a year for managing the accounts. The rest of our estate, the house, Richard's life insurance, our retirement accounts, would go to Nicole outright. Richard died 3 weeks after we signed the documents. The funeral, Nicole held my hand during the service. Afterward, she pulled me aside. "Thank you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for taking care of Dad those last months. And thank you for thinking of my kids. I know you and Dad set up those trusts to protect them." I felt a sharp pang of guilt. She thought we'd done it to protect the children. She had no idea I'd been protecting them from her. "Your dad loved you so much," I said. It was true, even if it wasn't the whole truth. The next 5 years passed quietly. Nicole seemed to be doing well. She and Jake bought a new car, a nice Honda Accord, not too extravagant. They took a vacation to Turks and Caicos. When I asked about it, Nicole smiled and said it was rewards points and savings. I didn't pry. The trust statements came every quarter. I'd glance at them, see distributions for educational expenses and trust administration fees, and file them away. The balances were declining, but that made sense. Emma had started at community college. College costs money. Nicole called me every week. We had Sunday dinners most months. She brought the kids over, and we'd eat pot roast and play cards. Everything seemed normal. Good, even that I noticed small things, of course. Nicole's new designer purse. The fact that Jake's consulting business seemed to be picking up. Tyler mentioning he might take a gap year before college instead of going straight from high school, but I was busy with my own life. I'd started volunteering at the senior center 3 days a week, teaching financial literacy classes to other retirees. I was on the board of the local women's shelter. Richard's death had left a hole in my life, but I was filling it with purpose. The grandchildren were my joy. Emma came over to study for her biology exams, sprawled across my dining room table with textbooks and highlighters. She complained about how expensive everything was: textbooks, lab fees, parking passes. I'd slip her $100 here and there. For books, I'd say, Tyler worked part-time at Target, saving up for college. He'd show me his bank account balance with pride. "Almost $3,000, Grandma," he'd say. Sophie was quieter, more introspective. She'd show me her sketches, gorgeous, detailed drawings of buildings and landscapes. "I want to study architecture," she told me once. Or maybe graphic design. I assumed Nicole was managing the trusts properly. Why wouldn't she? She was their mother. The money was there for them. All she had to do was follow the structure Richard and I had set up. I never imagined she'd steal from her own children. Emma showed up at my house on a Tuesday afternoon in March with her laptop and a confused expression I'd never seen before. "Grandma, can you help me with something?" I was in the kitchen making tea. "Of course, honey. What's going on?" She sat at the kitchen table and opened her laptop. "I'm filling out financial aid applications for transfer schools. I want to go to a 4-year university for pre-med, and there's this question about trust funds and assets." I set down 2 mugs and sat across from her. "Okay. It asks for the current balance of any trusts I'm a beneficiary of. I need to report it accurately because they verify everything." She looked up at me. I asked Mom for the balance of my trust, and she got really weird about it. Something cold touched the base of my spine. Weird how? Defensive, I guess? She said the trust is invested, and she'd have to get back to me with the exact number. "But Grandma, the application is due Friday." And when I pushed, she said I didn't need to worry about the trust, that it's complicated, and I should just estimate. Emma's voice dropped. "You can't estimate on financial aid forms. They cross-reference everything. If I put down the wrong number, they could reject my application or accuse me of fraud." I kept my voice level. "Let me call your mom. I'm sure it's just a miscommunication." After Emma left, I didn't call Nicole. Instead, I went to my filing cabinet and pulled out the trust documents. I read through them carefully. Even though I'd read them 100 times before, as backup trustee, I had the right to request account statements at any time. I picked up the phone and called the bank where the trusts were held. "First National, this is Derek speaking." Hello, this is Margaret Chen. I'm the backup trustee for 4 trust accounts held at your institution. I need current statements for all 4 trusts. Of course, Mrs. Chen. Let me pull up those accounts. Can you verify the last 4 digits of your social security number? I did. He typed for a moment. Perfect. I can email you the most recent quarterly statements. Would you like me to send the last 2 years of statements as well? Yes, please. You should have them within the hour. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at my kitchen table. My hands were steady. 40 years as an accountant had trained me not to panic before I saw the numbers. There was probably a reasonable explanation. Maybe the money was in a CD that wasn't easy to access. Maybe there were some short-term losses that Nicole was embarrassed about. The email arrived 37 minutes later. I opened the attachments one by one. Emma's Trust. Current balance, $22, 147. I stared at the number. Read it again. Checked the account number to make sure I had the right trust. It should have been around $140,000 at minimum. Emma had only been in community college for 2 years. Even with tuition, books, and fees, she shouldn't have needed more than $15,000 total. With interest, the trust should still have had well over $130,000. That my hands weren't steady anymore at Tyler's Trust. Current balance, $18, 234. Tyler hadn't started college yet. His trust should have been completely untouched. All $150,000 should still be there, plus 5 years of interest. Sophie's Trust. Current balance, $31, 089. Sophie was still in high school. Her trust should have been intact. I opened the last statement with a sense of inevitability. Nicole's personal trust. Current balance, $8 for 47. I did the math in my head. All 4 trusts combined, $79, 917. There should have been over $500,000 plus 5 years of interest. Conservative estimate, $525, 000. Over $445,000 was missing. I got up and poured the tea down the sink. Made coffee instead. This was going to take a while. I opened the transaction histories and started reading. The pattern emerged within minutes. Every single month for the past 5 years. Trust administration fee, $2,500. Every quarter. Investment management fee, $7,500. Scattered throughout. Educational expenses, $15,000. Trust-related legal fees, $12,000. Investment advisory services, $8,500. I grabbed a calculator and a notepad. Started adding. Trust administration fees alone, $2,500 per month times 60 months. $150,000. Investment management fees, $7,500 per quarter times 20 quarters. $150,000. I went through every single transaction, categorizing and totaling to be by the time I finished. It was dark outside. Trust administration fees, $150,000. Investment management fees, paid to Coastal Consulting Group, $118,500. Educational expenses, $94,750. Legal fees, $54,200. Various other advisory and management fees, $47,890. Total withdrawals, $465, $340. I sat back in my chair and stared at the numbers. I taught financial literacy for 40 years before I retired. I knew exactly what reasonable trust fees looked like. They were typically around 1% of assets under management annually. On $500,000, that would be $5,000 per year. Nicole had been paying herself $30,000 per year in administration fees alone, plus another $30,000 to $40,000 annually for various investment management and advisory services and the educational expenses. I'd been slipping Emma money for textbooks. Tyler hadn't even started college. Sophie was in high school. I picked up the phone and called the bank again. Derek, I have some questions about these trust transactions. Of course, Mrs. Chen. These trust administration fees, where were those payments sent? A pause. Those were electronic transfers to the trustee's personal checking account, as authorized by the trustee. All of them? Yes, ma'am. The trustee has discretion to compensate herself for trust management, as specified in the trust documents. My throat was tight. And the investment management fees? The ones paid to Coastal Consulting Group. More typing. That appears to be an LLC registered to Nicole Chin Martinez and Jacob Martinez, the trustee's company. And the educational expenses? Those were also transferred to accounts controlled by the trustee. I thanked him and hung up. My daughter had created a fake consulting company and had been paying herself from her children's college funds for 5 years. I couldn't sleep. At 2 in the morning, I was on my laptop with a cup of coffee, Googling Coastal Consulting Group and Nicole's name. Nothing came up. No website. No business listings. No LinkedIn presence. Then I checked Nicole's Facebook page, which I rarely looked at. I scrolled back through the years, the Turks and Caicos vacation, Christmas in Vail, a new kitchen renovation, and then, 8 months ago, a post with 6 photos. Finally made our dream come true. Our little piece of paradise in Wilmington. Can't wait to make memories here with our family. Beach with umbrella house #beach house #blessed #dreams come true. The house was beautiful. Modern. Right on the water. The photos showed hardwood floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, a deck overlooking the ocean that I clicked through to the real estate listing that Nicole had shared in the comments. Purchase price, $485,000. Closing date, 8 months ago. I pulled up the trust transaction history for that month. 2 weeks before the closing date. Investment management fee, $60,000. 1 week before closing. Trust administration fee, $25,000. The week of closing. Educational expenses, $45,000. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark. My daughter had bought a beach house with her children's college money. I didn't confront Nicole immediately. 40 years as an accountant had taught me one essential truth. Emotion without evidence is just noise. If I was going to do this, I needed to do it right. I spent the next week in my home office, building a case that I printed every trust statement from the past 5 years. Created spreadsheets tracking every withdrawal, every fee, every suspicious transaction. I pulled the original trust documents and highlighted the sections about trustee compensation, specifically the phrase reasonable and customary, which our lawyer had explained meant approximately 1% of assets annually. I took screenshots of Nicole's Facebook posts. The beach house, the Vail trip, the kitchen renovation, the new car. I ran the dates against the trust withdrawals. The correlation was perfect. Every major purchase coincided with a spike in fees or expenses. I pulled public property records for the beach house. Saw that it was titled jointly to Nicole and Jake. Saw the purchase price, the closing date, the mortgage amount. Then I made a comprehensive spreadsheet. Every fraudulent transaction, categorized and color-coded. Trust administration fees, $150,000. Highlighted in red, investment management fees paid to Coastal Consulting Group, $118,500. Highlighted in orange. Educational expenses while Emma worked 2 jobs and Tyler hadn't started college, $94,750. Highlighted in yellow. Legal fees for trusts that had never been in litigation, $54,200. Highlighted in blue. Various other advisory and management fees, $47,890. Highlighted in green. Total, $465,340 stolen from her own children. But I needed to confirm what I suspected. I called Emma on Thursday afternoon. "Hey, Grandma," she said. She sounded tired. "Hi, honey. Quick question. Did your mom ever set up that 529 college savings plan she mentioned a few years ago?" Emma laughed, but there was no humor in it. "No." She said I had the trust fund Grandpa left me, so I didn't need a 529. That the trust was better. "And she's been helping with your tuition at community college?" "Not really." Emma's voice went quieter. She said the trust is invested for maximum growth, and I shouldn't touch it until I transfer to a 4-year school. That's why I work at the coffee shop and do tutoring. I need to pay for classes somehow. My heart was breaking. What about Tyler? Is he still planning to start college in the fall? He's taking a gap year. Mom said we need to be strategic about the trust money, and it makes more sense for him to work and save first, build up his resume. Emma paused. He was really disappointed. He had an acceptance letter to state school and everything. But Mom said money is tight, and we have to be smart. Money is tight. While Nicole was posting photos from her beach house. Thanks, honey. I was just curious. After we hung up, I sat at my desk and stared at the wall that I knew what I had to do. The question was whether I could actually do it. I called my lawyer, David, the next morning. We'd known each other for 20 years. He'd handled Richard's estate. He'd drawn up the trust documents. Margaret, he said warmly. How are you? I need to see you. Today, if possible. It's about the trusts. His tone shifted immediately. I have an opening at 2. I brought everything. The statements, the spreadsheets, the Facebook screenshots, the property records. Laid it all out on his conference table. David's face grew graver with each page he reviewed. Margaret, he said finally. This is textbook trust fund embezzlement. The fees she's claiming are wildly above reasonable compensation. The timing of these withdrawals with her personal purchases? Any prosecutor would love this case. What are my options? He leaned back in his chair. As backup trustee, you have a fiduciary duty to the beneficiaries, your grandchildren. Legally, you're obligated to report this and seek restitution. He paused. But I know this is your daughter. What if I just remove her as trustee? Make her pay it back privately? David shook his head. She'd have to liquidate the beach house immediately. And even then, you're talking about over $465,000. The house won't cover it after the mortgage is paid off. She'd likely have to file for bankruptcy, which means the kids would recover pennies on the dollar through the bankruptcy proceedings. He looked at me steadily. And Margaret, if you know about this theft and don't report it, you could be held personally liable as backup trustee for failing to protect the beneficiaries. The walls felt like they were closing in. So, I have to choose between sending my daughter to prison or failing my grandchildren. Essentially, yes. I'm sorry. I drove home in silence. Made dinner I didn't eat. Sat in the living room where Richard and I used to watch television together. What would he want? Richard had wanted to leave everything to Nicole directly. No trusts, no structure, no restrictions. He believed in her, trusted her completely, and I was the one who'd insisted on trusts. I was the one who'd told him we needed to protect the money. Who'd convinced him that Nicole couldn't be trusted with it all at once. Was I wrong? Did my lack of trust create this situation? If we'd just given Nicole the money outright like Richard wanted, would she have been fine? Would we have avoided all of this? But then I thought about Emma. 20 years old, working 2 jobs while her mother vacationed in a beach house bought with Emma's college fund. Tyler, postponing his dreams because there was no money, while that money sat in his mother's vacation home. Sophie, who hadn't even bothered applying to art schools because she knew the family couldn't afford it. The children were innocent. They'd done nothing wrong. They'd trusted their mother, and she betrayed them in the most fundamental way possible. That I picked up my phone and called David back. I want to do this right, I said. Hire a forensic accountant. Document everything professionally. Then, I want to confront Nicole with you present. Give her one chance to make this right. Liquidate the beach house. Return every penny. Step down as trustee. If she refuses, we go to the police. And if she agrees to make restitution? If she makes full restitution and gets out of their lives. My voice was steady. Then I let it go. I'm not interested in revenge, David. I'm interested in protecting my grandchildren's futures. The beach house won't cover the full amount after the mortgage. Then she'll figure it out. Sell everything else. Take out loans. Get a second job. I don't care how long it takes. But I will not let my grandchildren suffer because their mother is a thief. We scheduled the meeting for the following Thursday. I told Nicole we needed to meet with a lawyer about trust administration questions. She agreed easily. Said she'd been meaning to talk to me about updating some of the trust structures anyway. She had no idea what was coming. I had 5 days to prepare for the moment I'd have to choose my grandchildren over my own child. I didn't sleep much that week. Thursday arrived. I barely slept the night before, kept rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd say it. This was my daughter. The baby I'd rocked to sleep through colic and teething. The girl who used to bring me dandelions from the backyard like they were prize roses. She was also the woman who'd stolen nearly $500,000 from her own children. Nicole arrived at David's office at 2 o'clock sharp. She looked professional. Navy blazer, cream blouse, heels that clicked confidently across the marble floor. She kissed my cheek, and I caught the scent of her perfume. Chanel. Expensive. I wondered if I'd actually bought it for her last Christmas, or if my grandchildren's college fund had. The conference room felt too cold. Martin, the forensic accountant, was already set up with his laptop connected to the projector. David stood when we entered, gestured to the seats across from him. Nicole's smile faltered when she saw Martin. Her eyes flicked to me, searching. Mom? What's going on? I couldn't speak yet. My throat was too tight. David took over. Nicole, your mother requested a comprehensive audit of the 4 trusts. As backup trustee, that's within her rights. Nicole's face went carefully blank. That expression, I'd seen it 100 times growing up. When she'd gotten caught lying about where she'd been. When report cards came home with grades lower than she'd promised. The shutters coming down. Of course, she said, sitting slowly. The trusts are properly managed. I have nothing to hide. Martin pulled up his first slide. Numbers filled the screen. He walked through it methodically, the original amounts, the current balances, the $465,000 gap. Nicole's face stayed composed, but I saw her hands tighten on the armrests. She tried to explain. The market volatility, the complex investment strategies, the necessary fees for proper management. Her voice stayed level, professional, like she was presenting to a board of directors instead of explaining why her children's futures had disappeared. Then Martin showed the timeline. Every withdrawal matched to a purchase. The $60,000 investment fee, 2 weeks before the beach house closing. The $45,000 in educational expenses that same week. The pattern was undeniable. When the photos of the beach house appeared on the screen, her own Facebook posts, her own captions about dreams coming true, Nicole stopped talking. The silence stretched. I could hear the air conditioning, the distant sound of traffic outside, my own heartbeat. You bought a beach house, I said finally. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. With your children's college money. Nicole's composure cracked. She stood up so fast her chair rolled backward. You want to know why? Her voice was shaking now, rising. Because that money should have been mine. Dad wanted to leave it to me. All of it. And you convinced him I couldn't handle it. You manipulated him when he was dying because you've never trusted me. Not once in my entire life. The words hit like physical blows. Because she was right. I hadn't trusted her. I'd spent her whole childhood waiting for her to fail, preparing for it, building safety nets she never asked for. I've spent 45 years trying to prove myself to you, she continued. Tears were streaming down her face now, but her voice was pure anger. Nothing was ever good enough. And then Dad dies and leaves me as trustee of money that should have been mine anyway, like I'm some child who needs supervision. She grabbed her purse, her hands shaking. So yes, I took what should have been mine in the first place. Dad would have wanted me to have that house. He would have wanted me to be happy. But you made sure I had to jump through hoops to get what was mine. I felt something break inside my chest, because part of what she was saying was true. I had manipulated Richard. I had convinced him to structure things my way because I didn't trust our daughter to make good decisions. I'd wrapped it in language about protection and security, but the truth was simpler and uglier. I thought I knew better. You're right, I said quietly. I didn't trust you. I was afraid you'd make mistakes, that Jake would waste it, that you'd end up with nothing. I paused, forced myself to continue. And I was wrong to manipulate your father. I should have been honest about my concerns instead of framing it as protection. Nicole's face shifted, surprised I was agreeing with her. But Nicole. I stood up to face her. These are your children. Emma is exhausted from working 2 jobs. Tyler gave up his acceptance to state school. Sophie stopped dreaming about art school because she thinks there's no money. My voice broke. If you were angry at me, you should have fought me, challenged the trust in court, argued that your father was unduly influenced. But you didn't. You lied to them. You let Emma believe she had to work herself to exhaustion. You let Tyler think he had to postpone his life. You stole from them, Nicole. She opened her mouth to respond, but Martin cleared his throat and pulled up another document on the screen, the authorization forms. Trust distributions over $10,000 required both trustee and backup trustee signatures. There were 17 of them. Each one had my signature, except I'd never seen them before. Mrs. Chun, Martin said, "Are these your signatures?" I looked at them closely. They were good forgeries. Someone who didn't know my signature might have been fooled. But I'd signed my name thousands of times over 40 years. These weren't mine. No, I said. I never signed these. Nicole sank back into her chair. The fight went out of her posture all at once. David's voice was gentle but firm. Forgery is a felony, Nicole. Combined with the trust fund theft, we're looking at serious criminal charges. I pulled a folder from my bag and slid it across the table. Inside were the criminal complaint forms already filled out. David had prepared them days ago, just in case. Here's what's going to happen, I said. My voice was steadier than I felt. You're going to list the beach house for sale immediately. Every penny goes back to the trusts. You're going to liquidate everything you bought with that money, the car, the jewelry, whatever it takes. Nicole stared at the papers but didn't touch them. You're stepping down as trustee today. You'll never have access to these accounts again. I paused. And you're going to get a job and set up a payment plan for whatever the asset sales don't cover. I don't care if it takes 20 years. You're going to make your children whole. And if I refuse, her voice was barely a whisper. Then I sign these complaints. We walk them to the DA's office today. You'll be arrested within 48 hours. She looked at me for a long moment. The anger was gone from her face now, replaced by something I couldn't quite read. Resignation, maybe. Or hatred. Or both. You've finally done it, Mom, she said softly. You've finally proven I'm exactly as incompetent as you always believed I was. She stood, gathered her purse with trembling hands. I'll list the house. I'll pay it back. But not because you're right. Because you've backed me into a corner, just like you did with Dad. She walked to the door, then turned back. When this is over, when Emma and Tyler and Sophie have their money back, you'll still be the woman who destroyed her daughter's life because she couldn't let go of control. The door closed behind her with a soft click. I sat in the silence, feeling hollow. David said something about doing the right thing, but I barely heard him. I just saved my grandchildren's futures and lost my daughter, and I still wasn't sure which one of us was the villain in this story. The beach house went up for sale within 48 hours. I saw the listing online. The same photos Nicole had posted on Facebook, but now with a price tag and the words, "Motivated Seller" in bold. The real estate agent told David it was underwater on the mortgage. After closing costs and paying off what they owed, there'd be about $180,000 left. Less than half of what Nicole had stolen. Within a month, Nicole and Jake's cars were repossessed. Nicole took a job as an administrative assistant at a dental office, which felt like some kind of cosmic irony. Jake picked up extra contractor work on weekends. Together, they agreed to a payment plan, $2,500 a month for the next 10 years to cover what the house sale couldn't. I did the math late one night, sitting at my kitchen table with a calculator and a cup of cold coffee. Even with the house sale and the payment plan, there'd still be a significant shortfall. The trusts needed to be restored now. Emma needed to transfer schools. Tyler needed to start college. Sophie needed to apply to art programs. I transferred $100,000 from my retirement account to make up the immediate difference. Nicole would pay me back over time, along with the remaining trust debt. At least that was the plan. I told the kids on a Sunday afternoon. Emma, Tyler, and Sophie came over for dinner, expecting pot roast and card games like always. Instead, I sat them down and explained everything. Emma cried. Not dramatic sobbing, just quiet tears streaming down her face while she stared at her hands. Mom did this? Our mom. Tyler was angry. He stood up, paced the living room, his jaw clenched tight. I could have been in college this whole time. I gave up my acceptance letter. I've been working at Target for a year because she said there was no money. Sophie was the quietest. She sat curled in the armchair, looking smaller than her 16 years. Finally, she said, "Does this mean I can apply to art school now?" That broke something in me. Of all the reactions, that one hurt the most. Not anger, not betrayal, just a quiet, cautious hope that maybe her dreams weren't dead after all. But then Emma asked the question I'd been dreading. "Grandma, is it true you convinced Grandpa not to leave the money to Mom?" I'd promised myself I'd be honest with them. They deserve that much. "Yes," I said. "I didn't trust your mother to manage it well. I was afraid your father would make poor decisions with it. I thought I was protecting all of you." Tyler stopped pacing. "Were you right?" I looked at my 3 grandchildren, brilliant, damaged, trying to make sense of a situation where everyone was wrong and everyone was right. "About your mother stealing?" "Yes." "About whether I had the right to manipulate your grandfather's wishes?" I paused. "I don't know anymore. Nicole hasn't spoken to me in 6 months now. The kids visit, but there's a tension that wasn't there before. They feel caught between us, and I hate that I put them in that position." Emma came for Sunday dinner last week. While we were washing dishes, she said quietly, "Mom says you always made her feel like a failure. Is that true?" I handed her a plate to dry and forced myself to answer honestly. "Probably." I was so focused on protecting everyone that I never stopped to ask if my protection was actually just control. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the sound of running water. 3 weeks ago, Jake sent me a text. Just one line. "You broke my wife. Hope the money was worth it." I didn't respond. What could I say? That I was sorry? That I'd do it again? Both were true. That I still teach financial literacy at the Senior Center on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Last week's topic was family and money. I told a sanitized version of my story. No names, no identifying details. Just the skeleton of it. Sometimes the right thing and the kind thing aren't the same, I told the class. I was legally right. Morally, I'm still not sure. An elderly man in the back raised his hand. "Would you do it again?" I thought about Emma, now thriving at a 4-year university on a pre-med track. Tyler, finishing his freshman year studying engineering. Sophie, who'd been accepted to 3 art schools and was agonizing over which one to choose. I thought about Nicole, working a job she hates to pay back money she believes should have been hers in the first place. About the grandchildren who visit less frequently now, whose hugs feel more obligatory than warm. "Yes," I said finally, because it wasn't about me and my daughter. It was about 3 kids who deserve their futures. But I'd do the first part differently. I trust less in control and more in communication. Last week, Emma's college sent out graduation announcements for next year. She'll be the first in our family to get a 4-year degree. The announcement came in the mail, thick cream cardstock with embossed lettering. No note, no message. Just the announcement. I don't know if I'm invited to the ceremony. The kids still visit sometimes, but the easy warmth is gone. They're polite, even loving in their way. But there's a carefulness now, like they're navigating a minefield. They don't talk about their mother when they're here. I don't ask that I volunteer more now. Keep myself busy. Some nights I sit in the living room where Richard and I used to watch television together, and I wonder what he'd think of all this. Would he say I was right to protect the grandchildren? Or would he say I should have trusted Nicole, given her the money outright, let her make her own mistakes? I saved my grandchildren's futures. I know that. Emma will be a doctor. Tyler will be an engineer. Sophie will create beautiful things. But I lost my daughter. Maybe I lost her a long time ago, back when she was bringing me dandelions and I was already planning for the ways she'd disappoint me. Nicole was right about one thing. I never trusted her. And maybe that lack of trust created exactly what I was afraid of. The trusts are restored now. New trustee in place, a professional from the bank. The kids have their money. Their futures are secure. I have my principles intact and my family fractured. Some nights I wonder which one I'd trade if I could go back. Most nights, I still don't have an answer.